Okay, here we are. I haven't been here for a while, but
Welcome back,
yeah,
Judy.
I was in Chicago. Freezing.
For the Windy City, yeah.
Yeah, well,
Welcome to Cambridge Inside Out. What is today's date?
oh,
November
19th.
19th, 2019.
The Ides of November? No, 19th. Okay.
Right, yeah. We're kind of in the lame duck period
Yeah.
of the
City Council.
the 2018-19 City Council term. Starting to get that feel, with lightweight agendas.
When does the new council begin? Is it right after New Year's?
According to the Planning Charter, it happens on the first Monday of the year
Which
at
is-
10 a.m.
Which
So
is
that
what?
would
Do
be
you know what that is?
January 6th.
Okay, so
2020.
January 6th. All right.
Yeah. So and I'm pretty sure that the City Council gets inaugurated at 10 a.m.
Right.
And then the one bit of business, possibly two, that they do on opening day is the election of the mayor, should it be successful,
right,
and it's
yeah.
not always successful, famously so.
Yeah.
And then they adopt the rules, temporary rules for the city council.
And do those are they just standard, or they give them out for
Usually
each
what they
year?
do is they simply re-up the rules from the
Uh-huh.
previous city council. Last time around, they had an ad hoc committee to modify the rules,
Yeah, I
which
think I remember that. So what?
they did some very minor modifications.
Anything?
but,
So you anticipate anything really
No, I
radical?
don't think they'll change the rules. So I think everything will be the
Mm-hmm.
same. One part of the rules, technically, actually, is the enumeration of the various city councils committees.
Oh, right, because
So
they
that's-
combined some
Yeah,
last time,
so
didn't they, or
so
something?
you can, and every few terms there's some switching around. There used to be a lot more committees than there are now. There's actually, I think,
Thank
only about
goodness.
8 now.
Well, at least they're all televised, most of them, which is good.
Right. But if you have one committee on neighborhood and long-term planning,
Oh, yeah.
arts, celebration, and everything else
I
under
know.
the sun committee, sometimes I think, well, maybe that ought to be split in two.
Yeah.
But that's just me. But they may just go, just let it ride, keep it as it is, But that's how they do that. And then later in the day, toward evening, is when they do the inauguration of the school committee. And
Same day.
Same day, and usually, possibly by then, there will be a mayor, and then the mayor would officiate.
Is that
at
all done at City Hall?
No, usually that's done over. Let's see. Well, I don't know actually where they're going to
Wait,
do
I
it
mean,
this
City
year.
Hall, isn't that where they did the city council? I remember going one year.
Yeah, and then I've gone to the school
But the
committee
school
ones
committee
are
may not be
usually
there.
elsewhere.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Over by the high school, but I don't know. They could do it at City Hall too.
Yeah.
Who knows? But anyway, that'll commence in January. So we're now in this kind of weird period of November, December, where there were actually a bunch of various city council subcommittee meetings that were scheduled. Bunches of them have now been canceled.
Is that because it's
I think
a moot
part of it
point,
is
or nothing can get done, or
no, I don't think it's that. I think it's that some of the initiatives that may have begun during one council term essentially. So unless it's a zoning petition, they all kind of terminate with the
True.
end of the council. So there may be just some wisdom in saying, okay, let's just call it quits, and we'll just wait till the next council rolls around, and then we'll sort of start some of these fresh. They have a few zoning petitions that'll
So
still
few,
be live
right?
petitions.
Still, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the Harvard Square zoning petition will be
And the
still up.
that's the latest one. I
Yeah.
mean, and then CARP.
CARP,
That has to be decided, right?
Which may be so CARP, for those who don't know, is the petition. It's actually, I believe, the second or third filing of it. This
Yeah,
is the one for
quite a bit.
rezoning for the Cambridge Side
Side
Galleria
Galleria.
Mall there area, and I think it kind of got nixed for a number of reasons. There was some objections the first time through. Then they got intertwined with this issue about Eversource and
Which it still
Power for
is.
East Cambridge,
Right.
which it somewhat still is.
Still is. Yeah.
I think also the revised version came back, which was a bit different than the prior one.
Did they limit height?
It's somewhat
'Cause I
more
think
limited,
some people,
I believe. And I think they are also massing the heights in different places so
Right.
that things are
Doesn't look-
stepping up in a more acceptable way.
Yeah.
I mean, my own personal feeling about it is that they can do what they want. They can upzone it, downzone it, do
Well,
nothing.
no, they can't do what they want. Who's they? You mean the
City
city?
council.
Oh,
City
okay. I thought
council.
you meant. Yeah.
But the thing is that in my personal opinion,
Mm-hmm.
that stretch of First Street where the garage is. That's going to get some revisions because
Yeah.
of the
Right.
settlement that happened with
Courthouse.
because of the courthouse matter, and the leasehold agreement for that. I've always felt that stretch of First Street could use a little
Yeah.
re-envisioning.
Well, that's Tom Joyce, who was a public commenter, just pointed that right out.
Yeah.
He said, that needs to be a vibrant, the plan would open that up, because right now it's a wall.
Right. I think the
Yeah.
city. I know some of the people who are in the planning department, community development department, do think about this stuff.
Yeah.
And the green line is going to get moved to the other side of the highway. First Street will continue all the way over to the McGrath Highway, which it doesn't do right now.
Yeah, it could be a much more vibrant corridor.
They can really reinvent it all and make it great.
Right, because the other side of the gallery, where the lagoon is that's very nice, but everything else is like a big fortress. And so if you can open all that up.
Yeah.
But they do need to deal with the energy issue. Well, they do need to deal with energy issues, whether it's Eversource or
Right.
not. They're going to need
But
more energy. We all do. We love our phones. We love our tablets. We love everything.
But the way I look at it, that is an underlying issue that runs through all of these
Right.
things.
So you're saying they shouldn't deny this one just based on that?
No, not just based on that.
Yeah.
I think that was being used as somewhat of a political leverage matter. I think that there's councilors need to step back and say, well, what looks like to us to be the best planning strategy for this area?
I mean, there's just so much you can stop or
Right.
control or do yourself.
Yeah.
And we can't,
And I think whatever they decide, whatever modifications to this CART petition for dealing with that area, they should be doing it in mind.
Yeah.
And honestly, this is really where Dennis Carlone can be the best friend to everybody, because he was the person who was writing a lot of the East Cambridge Riverfront
Well, what has
plan.
been his take so far? I don't remember.
I don't really know. But I don't know how anybody's going to vote. I haven't even given it any thought.
It
But
would be a shame if they voted it down.
I think they could vote. They can modify it. They can amend it. They could come up with something.
Well, they have to do something because it doesn't expire December 31st or something.
Well, then they could just let it expire and they could refile it again and
Wow.
go through it again. But the thing is at some point, people need to step up and say, well,
Yeah.
what kind of city do you want? Do you want it just to be big, big, big? Or do you want it to be great, great, great? And, sometimes
well, I think
those
some
are
people
not
would
compatible.
say they want it to be planned, have more oversight of it,
Yeah.
rather than whatever I'll use.
Yeah.
Each piece is then.
I mean,
yeah.
I think that area generally could
What
use a
did
little more
Envision
bulk,
say
but
about that?
It didn't.
It didn't address that area?
No, there are certain tremendous deficiencies in this.
$3.5 million.
This so-called envision process where they didn't really bother to envision much of anything in some regards, and this is one such
I think
place.
it's an example of when the city kind of throws money at consultants.
Yeah,
And not all the
sometimes.
time, but it just, I don't know.
Yeah,
Doesn't
I mean,
seem to be getting
I was thinking about this a lot lately, especially in the wake of all the election-related stuff and all the dogma that was being batted back and forth.
Yeah.
People that, I remember there was a group called Cambridge Citizens for Livable Neighborhoods once upon a time.
Still is, right?
Well, I think the entity still
Yeah.
technically exists and is doing business as the Association of Cambridge Neighborhoods. And this Cambridge Citizens Coalition was
That's
formed,
fairly new,
which sort of kind of is whistling a similar tune. They have this group's like Better Cambridge, which seems to advocate more for bigger, period. And I think that there's probably a kind of a sweet spot in there where some level of good density is good, but not so bulky, not so high as to become not livable, and based on whatever that means.
Well, some people would say that happened in Central Square, but
Yeah.
it's just,
Well, I mean, I think transit-oriented development still makes a lot of sense.
Well,
but the thing
transit
is,
for who?
right, really.
People that can afford it.
Yeah. But the thing is, when new buildings, I have a feeling about new buildings. Buildings should normally be expected to be most expensive when they're new. And then
I know
once
you
they're
say
in
that,
place,
yeah. Well,
then over years.
We'll talk about that in
it
3 years,
changes.
see what the rents are over there.
Oh,
Okay.
3 years is far too short a time. For
Oh,
that.
really?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Well,
Now I'm
then-
talking more like in the period of 15 years, 20
Well,
years down the road.
yeah, but I don't think that helps people right now looking for
No,
housing.
it doesn't.
so.
But the thing is that if you don't build the housing at some point, you don't have.
Well,
the
you get the
housing down
inclusionary
road.
units, but that's about it.
Yeah, but I think you just need units, and I think it's pretty clear that in the whole region you're going to need more housing units. Period. And I think in Cambridge to some degree that's true as
Okay.
well. We'll see
All
how
right,
it
but what
plays.
kind of housing? That's a whole other issue. All right.
Housing with walls and
No,
roofs and
I know, but
bathrooms
you and I
kitchens.
don't totally agree on the
Right.
AHO thing. So,
Right.
all right, so let's go on to other
All right.
not
Um,
those kind of
So,
issues.
all right. So, actually, one thing, this is like sort of a personal obsession with me, isn't it?
Oh,
Oh yeah, oh yeah. So every year since 1997, when we first implemented the computerized elections for cities, municipal elections, sort of it's become a bit of a tradition that at some point, once everything is finalized, I get access to the ballot data.
so in other words, before that, it was all paper ballots, and they didn't have
The only
any
way you
way
could
do
actually,
that,
there legally, if you wanted to pay and
to get those.
then you
yeah.
could have an election commissioners one by one
Oh,
turn them
God.
over, and you could record the
Yeah.
information.
That's,
You could do
that's
that, I
like
guess.
ancient, yeah.
Yeah. So that was not practical.
So 97 is when they computerized.
Yeah, the only time I actually know that anybody ever did anything like that was when there was a vacancy was going to happen in the wake of Billy Walsh's conviction and sentencing for bank fraud. So when he
so
left
they
the
had
council,
to recount the last.
they had to choose a replacement, and that
Right.
was the year when Jimmy McSweeney thought he was the last person counted out. This is based on the 1993 ballots.
Wow.
And he thought he should be then the person who would replace Walsh. But
I don't even know these names.
my friend David and I looked at that and we said, we don't think that's actually what's going to happen. We think Anthony Galluccio is going to get the victory. And
So you went to the election
Jimmy-
commission and gathered the data?
we didn't, but the
Oh.
thing is that McSweeney's people did, and they actually had them turn them over. One of them, they recorded the data, and then they went back to a friend's house, and they actually did kind of just based on the markings that they had recorded by hand. They then just figured out who the replacement would be.
But then they had to then let the officials do that because
Right,
you
'cause
don't go
that's-
to someone's house and
no,
say
no.
this is who it should
No, but
be.
the thing is that that's when they discovered that
see.
in fact it would be Galluccio who would
Wow.
actually win, which didn't set well. So then that led to the
Oh,
filing
a
of a
recount.
lawsuit.
Oh,
And it was
kidding.
McSweeney versus election commissioners, or McSweeney versus the world, or whatever
What were
it
they
was.
trying to base it on? I mean, if the results are the results,
I actually
right?
went to the court proceedings
Yeah.
for this one, and I met with the lawyers actually from McSweeney, and it was really based on a question of is there a fairness? Is the procedure that's used for filling vacancies is that
So what
comport
was the
with
procedure
with
then? Shouldn't it
various
be the
voting rights
next
laws?
person's votes that were closest, or no?
Okay, so the way it's determined, and I can
Yeah.
actually tell you who actually the replacements would be for all
Oh,
of
for
our
this-
newly elected
okay.
officials in a bit.
Yeah.
But the way it works in Cambridge is that should a vacancy arise
Mm-hmm.
for whatever reason during a council term or a school committee term, it's the same
Yeah.
rule. What you do is you take the quota of ballots that were used to elect that particular elected official,
Oh,
and you take those ballots only, and
Yeah.
you basically run them and do a mini count to elect one. So it's just an instant runoff procedure. You sort them by next available choice.
Well, how do
right.
you determine what the next available choice is?
You read the ballot. So, for example, if
see.
there was a ballot that said Jimmy McSweeney number 1 and number 2 was Robert Winters, then it would be distributed to Robert Winters, and they would
So
just
they
do it all
literally
that way.
looked at the number twos, another random kind of thing.
Or but the thing is, if number 2
Oh.
was somebody who's already elected, then
They
you
didn't
bypass
count that,
that and
okay.
you go to the next available choice.
And that's how it's done.
That's how it's done. That's how it's
Oh.
always been done, and it
Hmm.
was always done with paper ballots in the past.
Mm-hmm.
But the thing is, you can now, since all the ballot data is just electronic record, you can actually just run it right through the same tabulation
So
software.
what was he arguing? That method isn't fair because
Yeah, he
it's
was
a
not-
random thing?
Well,
or?
he made a case, or his lawyers made a case, why it should be the last person eliminated. I thought that was totally dead wrong.
Why?
Because if you have, for example, a very close election
Yeah.
where the 9th seat is picked up and,
By
and
6
by
votes,
two,
say.
two
Yeah.
candidates that are ideologically very different, right?
Uh-huh.
And then, but then so the last person counted out is fundamentally very different than the person who was actually elected.
Yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily view it as fair by eliminating one person and putting his diametric
Oh, so
opposite in to replace
But then
him.
you're getting into replacing the values of that person, and that's sort
Well,
of
but the thing
questionable,
is,
isn't it?
but the thing is the idea about ranked choice balloting is your ballots are essentially like acting as proxies
Okay.
for the voters. So the question is, what would the voters want? So if the voters were to elect
Yeah.
Billy Walsh, who would their next choice be.
Okay, I see. So basically,
So-
the way they did it is more fair, because then you're looking at a
There-
random transfer kind
There,
of thing.
there
yeah.
are a couple of little oddball things that
Yeah.
maybe could be made better, but the thing
Yeah.
is, the logic is pretty basic and simple. It just
Yeah.
says, let's let the ballots that elected Billy Walsh decide who Billy
Yeah.
Walsh's replacement would be. So then that was Anthony Galluccio, and that's how Anthony Galluccio.
So you're
came
saying
to
they
be
pulled
councilor.
all his number one ballots?
It's not just the number ones; it's number ones and subsequent ballots that came
Okay,
to
but-
elect him in the first place.
Oh, but they could find those.
They were actually, back when they did it with paper ballots, those
Yeah, I
were,
bet it was easier then.
They were just putting, no, it's much
No?
easier now.
Oh, okay.
So they basically just put in a box or an
Okay.
envelope, and then here's your 2,000 ballots, and
So now, all right, this is what you're going to talk about, where you can actually see what candidate got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
oh yeah, so you can look
Okay.
at all the ballot data now.
All
But the
right.
thing is, you also one of the outputs of the tabulation software is what they call the final piles report, which basically mimics what we used to do with the paper count, so
Mm-hmm.
that you can actually see the ballots that were used to elect each individual counselor. So what you do is you simply there's a file. You basically just do one little tiny edit. You
Yeah.
change it. You run it through the tabulation software, and it determines the replacement.
Wow.
It takes it takes about a tenth of a second to do.
All right, well, later you can.
So I actually
next-
did it with each of the counselors,
We'll
just,
do that
and
in
school committee members, just to see who
I
would
mean,
replace
it's
it.
awful to start talking about the replacements already. But
No,
we'll do that in the next segment. Because
Right.
actually, this is interesting, what you've actually discovered here.
Yeah. So
Okay.
so anyway, just so
Yeah.
a lot of things you can extract from the
Right.
ballot data, and it's it's available if somebody wants it. I always go there to be first in line because this is sort of my thing, right? So
So what are we looking at here?
all right, so this is right here. Just the first sample is. This is actually something you get from not from the ballot data, but basically from the output of the election is the final
Let's see if I
official
can make
results.
this a little
And-
bigger.
yeah,
All right,
and I
that's
just
better.
mention
Yeah.
it in here because the thing is that the election results on Tuesday night, on November 5th, were actually not official. Those were the preliminary results. Then
Right.
there was, when you included what we call the auxiliary ballots on Wednesday, then we call that
Right.
the unofficial results. But nothing's really over
Until they get
until
the
you get the
absentees, yeah.
overseas absentee ballots. And I think there were about 9 provisional ballots, voters who were, they were either challenged or whatever. I think maybe there was only 5 of them, or several of them accepted. Some people actually said, I swear I'm registered, but then when you actually checked, in fact, they weren't. So some of them were accepted and some of them were not. So it did change the totals and the count accordingly. It actually was almost no change at all. There were just a few extra ballots. Nothing unusual happened. The margins were very similar, and then it just sort of went on. This is a 2-pager. Actually, if you go to the second page, you can just scroll it, I think. Then, it again comes down to the same.
Oh, this is the left final, okay.
Right, so basically the election was fully decided at the end of the transfer of Azim's ballots, the 14th count, and at that point there was a gap between Craig Kelly and Dennis Carlone of,
Right.
I think, about 36 plus 24,
Yeah,
about
then-
58 ballots.
Yeah.
So that was really the gap, and that's really what determined the difference between the
So
ninth
does
and
this
10th
mean then
candidates.
that, for instance, Jeevan, rhymes with Stephen, right?
Right.
And Alana came in 8th and 9th?
Yeah, they were both.
Alana was 9th? That's interesting.
No, Tim Toomey
Oh, order
was ninth.
elected.
The order elected.
Oh, so, but why is she down here on the 14th
Because
count?
I have these ordered based on the original number 1 totals.
Oh, okay, because he's in the 15th,
Right.
I see it
So,
up
for
here.
example, that's why you see Tim Toomey came in 3rd in number 1 ballots, but he was
Right.
actually the 9th person elected.
Yeah,
the
and well,
very
Craig
last
came
person.
in, his, well,
Craig-
we don't have
Craig
it over
came
here,
in-
but his number 1 votes were
He came
higher
in
than.
7th in number 1 votes, but
Right.
then he ended up 10th in the poll
Right.
at the end.
Right.
Alana
right.
Mound started at 10th and was the
Ended up 14th.
8th person.
Oh, 8th person, right.
Or excuse me, 6th
No,
person
6th
elected.
person. So the
Yeah.
7th was
And
Jeevan
that was
and 8th.
Right, and
I
that
get
was
it,
largely
okay.
because of the way these
Sure.
slates were operating.
Well, yeah, I mean, the power of the slates, I have to say, you don't give them much, but, the more you.
No, I think they were very,
They were
very,
very
real.
powerful.
But the only point I would make about
Yeah.
that is that the slates really are best understood in the margins. In other words, and I'll make this point emphatically, really, is that somebody who's voting for Sumbul Siddiqui or Denise Simmons or Tim Toomey are voting for them because they're Sumbul Siddiqui, Denise Simmons, and Tim Toomey.
They don't care about the slates.
And they could have been on any slate at all. Right. The thing is, they're going to get their votes. So
you could probably say that about Patty Nolan too, in a way.
To some degree. To
some degree, because she was sort of
But she's a crossover candidate who is going from school committee to city council,
which are usually successful.
Yeah. No, they're usually.
Oh, really?
It's an uphill battle because
Mark was, Denise was, Henrietta was.
But it's only because there was a natural replacement.
Oh.
So when Alice Wolf first tried to jump from city council to school committee, she was not elected.
Oh, really? I didn't know
She
that.
was elected in a subsequent election, but not then. It's not easy. And even though she was like a top vote getter on the school committee.
Wow, that's interesting.
So, it depends on whether there's an opening in the body and whether you're a reasonable match to the opening.
Yeah.
So, Patty Nolan kind of could match up with Jan Devereaux in some respects. So that helped her.
Okay.
In many ways, right?
All right.
But so anyway, so that's a little bit of that one. We'll show you a few more of these items here as well. I think maybe just because we were talking a little bit about. Actually, let me go to this thing for the number.
Where?
Number one vote distribution.
Go here.
Think. Yeah, try that one. I think that's right. So again, this is stuff that you don't see from the right. It won't be easy, but it's really just more to make the point about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so. The thing is one thing that you can do is you can only get this from the ballot data. You can't get it from the actually election results when you see the official output. You actually have to put this into a database program.
So what are we looking at here? This is precinct, ward and precinct?
Right. So this is the type of stuff like when on election night people were, arching over to read the glass. These strips. But the thing is, that was only Tuesday night's results.
Right.
So basically what it shows is that by ward and precinct, if you read down for each candidate, it basically tells you where
how many votes
was.
Interesting. So what stands out
you
here?
You have to be a real political junkie to really get into this here. But for example, if you look at the column for John Pitkin, you'll see he's got 122 votes in Ward 6, Precinct 1.
That's where he lives.
But he didn't get them all around the city. So you see his support was very concentrated.
Who do you think was the most, did you study this to see who was the most representative of all of wards?
You mean a true citywide candidate?
Yeah. I know last time was Denise, wasn't it?
I think she has support. They
well,
all have.
Well, I wonder if
pockets of support.
Where's Sumbul's
scattered all around?
Hers is actually, look at that.
I think she's pretty much a strong citywide
She
candidate.
is. Look at this.
Yeah.
They're all in the double digits.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, my goodness. Look at
And
that. Ward 9, 106, and Ward 2.
Sumbul's biggest precincts are in the north,
Sure.
out by Ringe Towers
But Ward 5, well, that's her new precinct anyway.
Yeah.
She lives there
exactly.
now.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true.
Okay, but Ward 10,
So anyway, so this is it's useful for a number of reasons, not the least of which is just to sort of audit things and sort of check and make sure everything kind of adds up right, which, that's some part of what I have to do when I'm sort of looking at the ballot data initially.
Right, yeah.
Another thing that's very interesting, if you go do that very last
right
tab
here, okay.
Right, I think this is the one here.
Mayor's
so this is just something that is absolutely not how we choose a mayor.
Right,
okay, but the thing is that I remember Rusty Drugan was a former election commissioner, and Rusty and I used to say, one way they could actually do an election of a mayor, but of course nobody's going to want to, the councilors aren't going to give up their authority to make their own choices, of course. Yeah. But you could argue that a reasonably fair way to sort of reflect the public opinion would be basically to take all 9 winners, take their ballots and allocate them in the same way we do the regular election, and then do a sequence of runoffs to elect one. And if you do that, this is what happens. Okay, so the total number of ballots that are live ballots is always 2,813. If I'm reading that correctly.
Yeah. Right.
There's some ballots that didn't list any of the winners, so they can't be counted toward any of these ones here. But then you look and see who's comes in last, which was Sabrina Wheeler in this count. And then you defeat that candidate, so it brings it down to 8. Then you look who's last there. You defeat that candidate, which would have been Toomey, and then in sequence you defeat Toomey, then Mallon, then Carlo, and McGovern. In the end, what you end up with is actually the last 5 candidates standing are McGovern, Zondervan, Simmons, Nolan, and Siddiqui. McGovern being in 5th place. So when you defeat him, it actually brings it down to Zondervan, Simmons, Nolan, and Siddiqui. Zondervan being in fourth place. So then you knock him off, and it's down to the final three are three women. Isn't that interesting? Simmons, Nolan, and Siddiqui. You defeat Simmons, and then that basically settles it, because at that point, Sumbul Siddiqui's got 9,346 to Patty Nolan's 6968. Kind of interesting that newcomer Patty Nolan actually ends up finishing second in the mayoral stakes if you were to do it this way. And then you can formally do a final count just to bring it up to the quota, which is 50% plus one, essentially. So, as I say, it's a completely meaningless thing, but the thing is I do it every couple of years with ballot data just to kind of see, well, how would the voters decide? And it's actually usually
right, but then you're basically saying who really has the most votes.
Except that there are quite a few instances where, in fact, it's not the person with the most votes.
Well, at least in the last it seemed that way, or I don't know.
Well, I mean, but I could show you lots of elections where, in fact, it doesn't work out to be the person with the most votes, most number one votes, because it's a matter of how the various groupings, especially in this world of slates, the slates would actually be a very, very dominant factor in determining the outcomes there. I mean, if you had a lot of number one votes, but you weren't on anybody's slates, you wouldn't get any transfers.
Wow, there.
So ultimately, you'd be
Sorry,
left hanging.
Craig. Yeah.
Right. Well, that happened into the vote to elect 9.
Yeah.
So that's how we do the instant runoff to choose a mayor. If you wanted to do it that way, but let's be clear. It's on November 6th. They're just going to take the votes, and and they're already, I'm sure, negotiating amongst each other for who wants to be mayor.
I remember Henrietta Davis was always the most popular vote, but she never got to be mayor until she finally did, right?
And her very last term, she was mayor. She went out on top, absolutely.
You need consensus.
So anyway, so in the next half hour, we'll show a couple more of these things. Then we'll talk about some other things around town as well. It's again, if you leave it to me, I'll just obsess on ballot.
Yeah, right. We'll try to shut them up.
All right. So see you in a few minutes.
Right, bye.